Okay, my name is Banafshe Madani-Nejad. I teach at Southwestern University. I teach in the philosophy department. I focus on feminist philosophy and critical race theory, and specifically the intersections of those two. So, thank you for being here the day before the big election. Fingers crossed. All right, how many of y'all know what this is? How many? Hands up, I want to see. Wow. Okay, what is it? Kavanaugh protest in Austin, Texas. How did you find out about it? Professor said, okay. All right. How many of y'all knew and weren't Roy Casagrande's students? Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm one of the people on this line, and I've written 4 essays on how it happened, what it meant to us, and it's going to go up on Medium on Wednesday. I thought about sort of talking about what had happened, and I thought, why don't I just read you the first one? And then if you're interested, you could pick up on the others, go look at them. But specifically, I also would like for y'all to ask questions after the first one is read, maybe? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so the title of the essays is, right now, Escalating the Resistance. Civil Disobedience in Austin, Texas, Chapter 1, Making Patriarchy Pop Out. So the attorneys told me that I had to put in a disclaimer. So this is the disclaimer. The text below is a retelling of the arrest of 14 Austinites on the day Brett Kavanaugh was confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. What comes below is solely the author's interpretation of the said events and is in no way a reflection of what other line folk experienced, thought, or felt. The names of most of the line folk, actually some of the line folk and certain details inside the Travis County Jail have been kept from the published story for the sake of maintaining privacy and or maintaining safety of those concerned. Okay, Chapter 1. I got arrested with 13 amazing people as a result of a direct, nonviolent action on the day Kavanaugh was confirmed. We took over the Lamar Street Bridge in Austin, Texas, because committing a misdemeanor seems to be one of the only ways left to us for disturbing the normalcy of patriarchy at the national level. Because it's time to escalate in order to disrupt and make visible the norms covered by the systems of oppression we live in. Patriarchy, racism, capitalism, and imperialism are mostly invisible to a good portion of the liberals in this country. The liberals, the progressives. Direct action is an important way to take the lid off of the rot and create a public counter-narrative that is able to make systematic oppression pop out. It worked for the civil rights movement in the 1960s. It can work for us today. The following counter-narrative is mostly about patriarchy. Patriarchy consists of 2 parts. The first part is the ideology that women are lesser human beings and as a result deserve to be dominated and shown the way by men, an ideology also known as sexism. And the second part of patriarchy is the policing arm, the management machine, the mechanisms by which the ideology of sexism is enforced, also known as misogyny. As a child, it was sexism that told me studying physics was something boys did. Wanting an airplane or a spaceship to play with was abnormal, and that not wanting to wear mascara made me a freak. Whenever I bucked the ideology and stepped out of line, when I went on to study physics, when I worked at NASA, when I refused to wear mascara, misogyny punished me by making me feel uppity, like I was pretending to be smarter. Smarter than I really was, ugly, undesirable, and unloved by men. Together, the ideology and its policing mechanisms bolster the restrictive, unjust, patriarchal system we all swim in. We now live in an era where incidents like Kavanaugh's confirmation come across to liberals as jarring and confusing. I want to argue that the transparent, patriarchal soup we all swim in is so viscous that the only way to jump out for restorative air and for the normalized injustice to be seen is civil disobedience. We in this country have a long history of this sort of law bending. I planned on getting arrested the Friday before the confirmation in case my suspicions came true and Kavanaugh got enough votes in the Senate floor. My rage was bursting, like many of yours, out of my chest on Saturday, 3 p.m. when the appointment was announced. Sorry, y'all. Thanks. We marched to the bridge from City Hall where a rally was being held and did something important by getting arrested. The arrest had a restorative effect on our heavy hearts and the hearts of many other women in Austin. We shut down a major artery in the city of Austin during the longest and one of the biggest yearly music events in the city, ACL, and during the busiest day of said event. We shut it down. And it felt powerful for women all over the city, and that in itself should be reason enough for civil disobedience. We also got good press, which added to the self-empowerment effect. But the action also had an external effect. We pushed liberals who were ambivalent and confused about the confirmation to learn more and reassess patriarchy. Learn more about and reassess patriarchy. What we did came across as out of the ordinary, strange, even scary. It even made some liberals angry because they thought we had made it hard for folks to get to their big ACL party, and as such, hurt the progressive cause. There were also some complaints about impeding first responder access. For the record, we let all the first responders through. But the most important aftermath of that direct action was the creation of a space to develop a counter-narrative, an answer to the question most liberals had on their minds at that moment. How could someone like Kavanaugh ever get confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States in 2018? I was thankful for that week of extra investigation, y'all remember, even if it was a sham. For the same reason, women progressives took the reins during that extra week of debate and pushed the boundaries of feminism in this country. The discourse around the Me Too movement was pushed to new analytical levels during the flawed Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, especially when two Latinas who were able to punch through the thick, transparent soup with direct action. They stared Jeff Flake down and held him accountable as he was trying to scurry away. What I'm saying is the following. It's time for escalation through direct action because there is no other way for us to hear feminist answers, anti-racist answers, anti-imperialist answers to questions like, how can black folk be gunned down by the police for not cowering? How can we have passed a Muslim ban in 2018? How can we be caging children and now sending thousands of troops to meet them at asylum-seeking caravan of innocents at the southern border? How can worshipers in a synagogue be gunned down in 2018? How can all this be happening in the US right now? We're We're confused, not because the answer is not out there. We know it is, albeit hidden and obscure. The answer is the system itself. One of the essential functions of systems of oppression is to conceal their own complicity in impeding democratic processes. Part of patriarchy's job, patriarchy as a system, white supremacy's job, capitalism's job, is to mask itself. The issue is not a few bad police officers. It is not just a few bad men. It is not a few greedy corporations, hawkish or uninformed or extra racist politicians or presidents. The issues are structural and systematic. White supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism will not reveal themselves as problematic unless we expose the contradictions between our democratic ideals and a backdrop web of intersectional oppressive systems we're trying to make democracy happen in. I literally see my adopted country slipping away to the Nazis in front of my eyes. I immigrated here when I was 18 from Iran. I refuse to despair, I'll organize instead. This is what our activist matriarch Glenn Scott used to say. Some of us had her on our shoulders talking to us the day Kavanaugh was confirmed. Glenn was the mother of all Austin organizers. She'd been at it since the 1960s, and she passed away just a few weeks before the confirmation. She would have been leading the charge if she'd been around. We miss her, but she taught us well. As we planned Friday night, the day before the bridge takeover, I remember Glenn's daughter's words during the proclamation of Glenn Scott Day at City Hall the previous week. Above all, Glenn liked to have fun. I decided early on Friday morning that above all else, I was going to have fun doing this, Glenn style, and fun to me was to turn the gaze around on the patriarchy and sit pretty, surrounded by a beloved community, up on my perch, rejoicing in the fact that at least for now I still could. We were arrested that Saturday, but this was no ordinary arrest. I was arrested once before in 2003 protesting the war in Iraq, 6 days after I got my citizenship. At that time, we were hauled into the parking lot of the Travis County Jail, held, ticketed, and then let go. It was different this time. We never went actually into the jail that time. It was different this time. We were booked inside the jailhouse, put in jumpsuits, and sent to solitary cells for up to 8 hours. This arrest was different because it was time for an honest-to-goodness smackdown of a bunch of uppity women and their 4 male co-conspirators who had had the audacity to think they could question and curb male power. And by God, the weaponized arm of patriarchy was going to put us back in our places. We made misogyny work overtime that night. They kept us for hours and apparently past the time the judge had authorized our release. Candace Ayler, mother, nurse, social activist, justice activist, DSA leader, Democratic Socialists of America leader, prior candidate for state office and fellow linewoman, was somehow given a pamphlet about how the Austin Police Department is all about keeping inmates safe from sexual assault and harassment. That's one of the first things that they give only a few of us. I have to tell y'all, I thought long and hard about whether or not I ought to use inmate in this text and decided to go ahead and do so. I was not about to somehow name myself something less incriminating, something less reeking of criminalization than what is used to define all the other folks unlucky enough to be caught in this web of toxic, in the web of this toxic institution. The pamphlet had us really amused, given that what we were protesting that day. The bigger point is that even though we were not assaulted while in custody, there was plenty of harassment. The policing of women's voices, bodies, power and presence in male-dominated spaces, which is almost everywhere, is harassment. The policing was many faceted in this space where we had landed, of course. The language used in the pamphlet and the pretense to sensitivity and awareness were just plain freaking comical. I'm being rough on the police, you say? They were just doing their jobs? We had, after all, broken the law? Listen, if someone breaks into my house, tries to assault me in a parking lot, or hurts my children, I'm not going to call Ghostbusters. I'm going to call APD. I count on their protection to sleep well at night. This is not the experience of my Black, Native American, a good portion of my Latinx brothers and sisters. But I own up to the privilege of being well off, college educated, and married to a white presenting man, despite being brown and Muslim. The truth is, the police knew the purpose of our civil disobedience, and it was precisely because of what we were protesting that the smackdown happened. I'll tell you all what the smackdown was, but the police arrested us because they had to follow the law, but they didn't have to put us in our places every step of the way. They tried to stir up shame and a sense of criminality in us because we were questioning the roots of their operational philosophy. If American institutions are steeped in patriarchy and racism to different degrees, the police force is especially strong in its sexist, misogynist, and racist tone. As you will hear in the details I provide below, I think the police force includes some good folk who want to serve. But patriarchy and racism as systems that fuse themselves into institutional cultures have created that all-around toxic environment which makes caring difficult to deliver amid the ranks. Phase 1, after the arrest, inside APD HQ. We're all sitting, waiting to be further processed, and by that I mean interrogated and surveilled. There's more on this in Chapter 3. As far as I could tell, we're not cowering. Our heads are not down. They're held up high. We're looking around. There's a glitter in our eyes. We are proud. We're nervous, but some of us are also staring down the police. I notice a few policemen who are not toxic, who are too gentle to fit my image of U.S. police, any police. I see y'all, don't go changing. I'm thankful these men haven't been crushed yet by the system, but I don't need their kindness, and I'm amazed that the mean ones are not pushing me into anything beyond nervous concern. I see right through them. It's empowering. You know what gave me the ability to see through them? Feminism. Despite what we are told about our citizenry, these men are not individuals. They are just products of a cruel system that is based on domination, the domination of ultimately white alpha males over the rest of us. I notice that the women police are either visibly uncomfortable, even afraid, or overcompensating by taking part in the verbal policing. Keep it down over there. No more talking. And generally performing in rough and intimidating voices. Move here. Not there. Here. The policewomen knew we were there because of civil disobedience, fighting for all women, but they distanced themselves, numbed, and further hid their true selves. They knew, but were being the good girls, the cool ones. They're the ones who are even hotter because men could trust them to behave and help maintain the patriarchal system. Or they just had to be extra careful in order to hold on to their jobs. Or keep workplace abuse at bay. I saw right through these women cops too. I talked to them, considered back talk there, because the assumption is that as the badly behaved children that we were, we could only talk when we'd been given permission. We were literally told to face away from the elevator door when we were being transported. It felt like being sent to the corner in elementary school. The takedowns, the instilling of criminality, of worthlessness wasn't even subtle, and we were not treated any differently than if we were an alleged rapist, like the president, or an attempted rapist, like Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh. Oh wait, they're treated better. I backtalked the police women and asked them what they thought. Weren't they on our side? Most of the ones I spoke to were sympathetic. All were afraid about voicing it, too obviously. But the ones who were sympathetic weren't afraid enough to completely mask it. They let me know in their own way, a smile, a nod, a softening of the voice. You know what that tells me? Women who are the cool chicks and the good girls want us to reach out. They want out because who the hell wouldn't? It isn't that they just don't see the system. It's either that they just don't see the system and it's all too scary and confusing, or that they do see the system but have no choice but to take part in it in order to survive. I know about both of those choices because I've been there. I was once a cool girlfriend, several times, and then the cool wife. I've also been, and am still sometimes, the cool co-worker. I registered the smiles, the nods, the sighs, the tightly held bodies in the police station, and even the angry compensations. I see y'all, you are my sisters. And I will keep asking the questions. I didn't know it'd be hard to read out loud. It's kind of weird. The waiting area for booking is the first place we got placed in after entering the jail door. We are scared, but talking about the march. I want to show you all some more pictures. We're bold. We notice that we're together. We're thankful. We're amazed that we pulled the event off. We're hesitantly giddy. Yes, scared and a little shaky, but bold anyway, because fuck the patriarchy, and we are done. It's time for escalation. We will be heard, and we will be seen. A couple of especially toxic male cops start bantering. Two of them start a louder than usual. I mean, they were kind of buzzing, and then all of a sudden their voices got louder, while the others quiet down. We can't tell who the alphas are. One asks what the other's plans are that night. I'm going to a Kavanaugh party, he says, quickly adding, at the Yellow Rose. That statement right there is sexual harassment, according to that same freaking pamphlet they gave us. Quote, verbal comments by a staff member, including demeaning reference to gender, end quote. The statement was extra problematic since Justin Dusterhoff, an Austin police commander, is alleged to have assaulted a woman at the said gentleman's club. We look at each other, we're not surprised. We were given prison jumpsuits, and by that I mean straight up 2 shades of gray, vertically striped jumpsuits. Tammy Talpas, who wears many hats and is busy saving the world with or without the world's cooperation, pointed out, they are just like the prison jumpsuits in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This horrified me at first, but then I start to laugh about it. It occurs to me that I want some pictures in the getup, and of course I get my wish. A copy of my smug shot is framed and on the wall of my living room as a sign of my unafraid, bold, and searing presence in the center of condensed patriarchy. I like myself a little bit more every time I look at it. I think we all know that this jail thing is not permanent, that we have enough privilege in this patriarchal, racist, imperialist, capitalist, homophobic, and transphobic system to be saved in a few hours and live to tell the exciting tale as I'm doing right now. Did I tell y'all that we had a trans woman of color and a white activist for trans kids on the line? Their presence and camaraderie gave me life, because the patriarchy is cruel to those who cross over the lines. I'm talking about the bitches, the hoes, the feminists, basically all those who got arrested or wish they had been but couldn't, and the ones cheering us from the sidelines. But the system is so much more cruel to those who don't fit in the standard patriarchal boxes. Those folks elicit rage, sometimes murderous rage, even when they are behaving. That was the end of part 1. So, how long did that take? What time is it right now? Oh yeah, yeah, good. Hey.
questions.
Oh, sure, yeah. Sure.
Does anybody have any questions?
Hello. I just have a few questions jotted down. So y'all are protesting Kavanaugh. I don't know if you've heard recently, but I think yesterday it was on the Post. One of the ladies came out and said that she, like, 100% fabricated her story. Like that, she told like a story of like a vicious like raping in the back seat, and then she came out and said that that never happened. She was trying to push her political agenda. So what are your thoughts on that? Like,
What about all the other ones? And does that really change anything?
I mean, yeah, like a little bit.
How? How does that change patriarchy? How does that change all the rapes that happen all over the place?
Well, I'm just trying to call attention to maybe like all the, false rape accusations.
What about the true ones?
Well, what about the true ones?
Yeah, what about the true ones?
When false rape accusations, I think when they're, when people are imprisoned for that, I think that takes away from people that are actually raped.
Do you know the data on false rape accusations?
No, I don't.
Do you know the data on rape accusations?
No, I don't. And I'm just curious. I don't know if you heard that.
I have heard it. Maybe you should
Okay.
do some research. Okay.
Okay. Well, I also have.
More questions? Good.
So y'all were blocking traffic, but what about like people that are just trying to get to work and stuff? What about
It
them?
was Saturday.
Okay. Anybody trying to get anywhere in traffic?
They could go around.
Do you not just see that as like an inconvenience?
Yeah,
to a
it was
lot
an
of-
inconvenience,
But
absolutely.
for what cause? Why block traffic? Why not do something else? Like if I was in traffic, I'd probably just be more annoyed than anything.
Mm-hmm.
By standing in the street? Okay. All right.
I think you'll get that question answered if you read the second one. Yeah.
I just want to first thank you for sharing that. That was really good insight. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
What happened to y'all after you were released? Like, did you do stuff together? Like, what was your next step after your statement?
You mean once we got out
Once
of jail?
you got out of jail, like, did anything happen after that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, all 14 of us have cases pending, have one case pending. And we have the American Lawyers Guild is representing us pro bono. And they've done this for decades. That's part of their job. Yeah, it's...
What would you say, like, action is that college students could take who maybe can't afford to get arrested while they're in school? Like, any other action we can take or things we can do?
Yeah, I need to tell you all, that's going to be in the 4th chapter. Within hours of us getting arrested, several organizations raised thousands of dollars, just in case we had to pay fines. In the last, hardly anybody pays any fines because of these sorts of crowdsourcing things, yeah. So there are people who are ill, they're older, they have children to take care of, they have old parents to take care of. There are many people who cannot actually get arrested. But for every one person who can't get arrested, there are, I don't even know the number, there are countless people who can. It's also more difficult for, I don't think black folks should get on these civil disobedience laws as long as there are white people to do it. For people of color, it's up to them. I felt I would be able to get in there and get out. So I did it.
Hi, I want to say thank you for protesting, doing everything in a civil, peaceful manner.
Thank you.
And I was just wondering, with all of this negative rhetoric in the media that they're really stirring up because of voting and everything,
Because of what?
the voting that's coming up in the election.
Wait, what negative?
Oh, I'm talking about like the shooting of the yoga studio,
Ah.
shooting at the synagogue.
The backlash.
All of this. How can we change from putting negative, dark energy on the media for everybody to see to it being stuff like this that's more peaceful? Because this didn't get as much attention, I feel like, and this deserves it because this is going to help us grow forward as individuals. So I just want to know how we can generate more of this and like...
Generate more of this. Honestly, by becoming part of organizations that you believe in, because the people on this line belong to all sorts of different organizations. And in the city of Austin, we're very blessed because we are in contact with each other. And so when, in chapter 2, I talk about when I thought of doing this, I immediately knew who to contact. And the decision was made Friday morning, and this happened Saturday at 3. And the Facebook event page didn't go up until midnight Friday. And within 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, we had 1,200 people saying they were interested. I mean, these are the times we live in. These sorts of events will keep happening. And they're good in the sense that there is pent-up anger, pent-up frustration, pent-up energy to change things, to mobilize, to make a difference in all of us. And you just need to belong to the organizations you believe in, and you will hear about these sorts of stuff through them, and then you show up. We were on Twitter and Facebook, and I intentionally stay off of Twitter because I can only just deal with one thing. But I can't even deal with that. Facebook, I mean. But yeah, so the first step is to join an organization. There are this is Austin. There are a lot of progressive organizations in Austin. There's Indivisible, there's Democratic Socialists of America, there's, ACC, don't y'all, not 12th Revolution anymore, but what is it called? The Austin School. These are the ways that you find out.
Does anybody else have a question for this chapter?
Actually, I'm not going to do another chapter. This is it.
Okay.
This is it for me, yeah.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay.
I kind of was wondering what was going through your mind when you started planning out this organization. You said that a lot of people had a lot of response to you.
This was not an organization.
I'm sorry, I just
yeah.
meant like demonstration.
Yeah.
That you had a lot of people already on your Facebook page telling you, they were willing to help you out with this. Why was this your decision, I guess is what I'm asking, to organize? Why wasn't it something more like a march or something
We
bigger?
did have a march. We have gotten to the point where marches don't have effects anymore. Another march. I don't know if y'all, take classes that teach you about civil rights movement in the United States. This and 100 times worse than this was what was happening during that time. I mean, y'all have seen the videos, right? Being beaten by policemen, dogs being sicked on you, water hoses, people just in your face, spitting and spewing, calling you all sorts of names. This is nothing. This is nothing. That's what I'm trying to say. This is nothing, it's nothing to be scared of. We have been made to feel scared about a simple thing like this. Really.
And one more thing. So thinking as one of those drivers on that street, even if I was a progressive, I think that it would incite anger in me, most likely. So that anger would, I think kind of what he was saying, would directly be associated with you, with feminism, maybe even with progressivism. So I'm wondering, was it in your best interest to choose this kind of demonstration, even though it might get more publicity?
Yeah.
But it might also, for some people, especially the drivers on that street wanting to go to ACL,
You know,
reflect negatively.
this is what I was talking about. I think the majority of liberal men are patriarchal. It doesn't matter what we do. They will get mad.
I don't think that's true, but when you're blocking like traffic for probably miles, like I feel like everybody that's just like a lose-lose. You go to jail, everybody's like really pissed off, I'm sure.
Who's everybody? I think it's you're just pissed off.
I think that if the majority of people had to sit in traffic because people were sitting down.
If you read chapter 2, you'll see that we got lots of support, even from people in traffic.
Like the people that sat there, like they get out and say thank
Did you hear me? You need to go read a little bit. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question. You know, you look at the call that you took to block the lanes here was because you believed that Kavanaugh was guilty. Is that correct?
Actually, no, I think many of us thought Kavanaugh was guilty. The reason why we thought doing something this drastic was important is because we are all asleep. So doing something drastic, doing something that jars us, that even pisses us off, what else can we do? If it's supposed to be nonviolent, what other, if you have suggestions, I want to hear them. Because we are just sort of following a long tradition in the United States that actually got results.
I think what I mean is that I personally know two people that responded very much like Ms. Ford did in believing her story was actual truth because of deep-rooted pain that she received as a child and confusion and not quite being sure. That I've seen people personally, I've known psychoanalysts who also can say that those people exist, that their truth is what their truth is, but it's not a reality. And so when you have those people, you do have to cross-examine, you do have to take it before a hearing, a court, if it reaches a level like this, and you have to make the best decision that you can based on what is stated. And in my personal knowledge of two people, and again, some psychoanalytic work, it is possible.
What is
That
possible? Forget Dr. Ford.
Well, that's what this is all about, is it not?
No, this is about women, any woman, 1 out of 4 women in the United States who get raped, who can't even go and report it. I teach in a college campus. I'll just tell you one story.
But before that story, if you don't mind, the whole premise of this was based off of catapulting off of the Kavanaugh
That is
situation.
just one woman who presented her story. The reality of our lives, and not just in the United States, globally, is women get assaulted. They get raped, and it doesn't matter.
Well, I know that that's tough. was in the motion picture industry for 20 years.
In what industry? Sorry.
The motion picture industry, the film industry in Los Angeles. I worked with many directors, producers. I was in the male-dominated, if you will, career. My experience was completely different from what I've heard other people have.
That's
think
wonderful.
what
I
I'm- what I'm
myself
sa-
I'm a survivor, so I have my own story too.
And I appreciate that. I think that there are people that do have real genuine stories that
It's
do,
1 out of 4 women in the United States. It's not just people.
well,
Unless you actually don't believe women can be trusted or believed, which is a whole nother story.
I
just
think that
because
a lot
you
of them
haven't
can and a
experienced
lot of them
it-
cannot. And I don't believe that we live in a rape culture. I do not.
Everybody is.
And on that too, I think that when you, not you, but when organizations come together with a lot of young influential minds in college, I think that it is, it would be fair to present both sides very clearly.
Both sides of what?
Well, you said that you are a survivor and you have your
1
story.
in 4 is enough for me.
Okay,
What side are we talking about?
I think that both need to be presented.
What is the other side?
I went and lived in all of this world that you're talking about. I've seen things. I've seen things that
we
are
also
not.
live in a patriarchal society, patriarchal world where women's word counts as less. We are taught from when we are kids.
I think a long time ago, I think that that's changing now. I don't think it's as
Yes,
as
it's a little
drastic.
better. I believe that, but
I
still.
think there are so many women now in the workforce. I think that they outnumber men right now in I don't know what, I think someone's maybe trying to say what
Anyway,
it is.
I honor
So
your
women are-
opinion. Maybe
women are-
someone else can ask a
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
Thank you.
2 things. First, in response to that, it's great that you haven't experienced that, but I've never had my car stolen, but I'm not pretending that doesn't happen to people. It's kind of inappropriate for you to put your experience on other people just because yours doesn't fit theirs.
You're exactly right. And that's what I was trying to say, is that there's an experience.
There is a national statistics of 1 in 4 women getting raped in this country. This is a national statistics. Are you actually saying that's not even valid?
Well, I think what the gentleman said in the back also was they're being prosecuted. The ones that can be are being
Yeah, I think that's a bad thing. And I'm sorry. If that's happening, that's a bad thing. But
The other thing is when I was 19, I was asked to go up by an actor to his room. I was 19, and I said, yeah, okay, because I wanted to know about the job that he had for me. The same song and dance that a lot of us went through. I went up to his room. He offered me a drink. We sat and we talked. I started to feel that there really wasn't the job that he wanted me to do on his new movie. So I excused myself, I left. I got lucky. He didn't attack me, he didn't throw me out.
you sure did.
But I walked into that, it does happen, I'm not saying it doesn't.
Then what are you saying?
I'm saying we need to educate our girls.
That doesn't mean that this is not a rape culture or 1/4 of people.
We don't go upstairs,
We-
we
I-
don't have a drink with them, and we take responsibility for our,
I agree. I agree with you. I was also 13. I went into a shop to buy cloth, and the guy completely molested me. 13-year-old. That shit happens.
my daughter was date raped, so don't think
Then I don't know what your point is. I think that people who lie, there are people who lie. Our president does it all the time. Agreed. There are folks who don't know how to take care of themselves when they're 19. Agreed. 1 in 4 women still get raped. Sexism and misogyny still exists in this country. It can all happen at the same time. Okay. Any other questions?
I had a question for you.
Yes.
You said that the marches no longer accomplish anything.
They do, but I think it's time to escalate.
I guess my question was, did you accomplish what you were setting out to with this demonstration?
Absolutely. One of the things that these pop-out incidents do is give us the opportunity to change the narrative, to be heard. Because this all of a sudden is it's kind of pathetic, but it's a sexy story. It's something different. And this is the culture we live in. It has to be different to get people's attention. Yeah.
Hi. I think what you did was great.
Thank you.
I work on Lamar. I was actually driving to work the day this happened.
Uh-oh.
I was one of the people who you inconvenienced my day. But I called my boss. I said, there's some protesters. I'm going to be late. And he said, okay. What should make you more angry is not you blocking the street, but the women who are not being represented and the women who
Thank you.
being raped and molested. And if you are a woman who hasn't been raped, you are a woman who has been heckled or spoken down to or treated differently. But it shouldn't matter. Like, it should make you angry. It should cause conversation. When I got to work that day, I didn't change any laws, but I'm the only white woman who works in my restaurant, and we had a conversation about it. Like, that's what this can open up. And I think that the people who don't feel enraged by it and who don't feel enraged when they are invalidated are people who have never been in that situation or maybe who don't know someone personally. But probably 3 out of 4 women in this room have been raped, and you don't know that.
You know, it's not about rape. I love the fact that you brought this up. Rape is sort of the end game as far as patriarchy is concerned. There are all these aggressions that happen all in this large spectrum all the way to rape. I don't have to explain this to the women, right? It's just that we are so used to it. We think this is normal. We think this is the way it is. It's not supposed to be this way.
And maybe I shouldn't have said rape, but that is an easy one.
No, of course. I mean, it's because the whole incident was based on a trial that, not a trial actually, a hearing, et cetera, that was revolved around attempted rape. That's sort of how we're framing the discussion, but in reality, my first job in the United States was in a space physics lab. The reason why I was hired was because I had a nice ass. And the professor thought it was okay to tell me this. And the professor thought it was okay to change the pathway, the way that the students would come in and go into the lab used to be some other way. He made it so that there was a long path where people would have to walk away from him to get to their lab right after he hired me. All over his office, this is 1990s, early 1990s, all over his office were postcards of nude women. And I had to enter that every day. That's fucked up, people. He never raped me. He never laid a hand on me. I hated going to my job every day. When I was a brilliant student, he never looked at me like I was a brilliant student. I was just a piece of motherfucking ass to him. Do you know how that makes an 18, 19-year-old feel like? I've already been told all my life that I'm not supposed to do any of this stuff. Here I am, I've entered this, and instead of, right, lifting me up, giving me whatever, he just kept reinforcing the fact that I was nothing but a sexual object. I had no brain. This is all misogyny. This is all part of patriarchy. Doesn't have to be rape. I made it. I made it through. Why did I have to suffer through that? Why did he never have to pay for doing that to me? we all have a lot of these sorts of experiences. In most our cases, the reason why I say patriarchy doesn't pop out is because it's normal. This is just how it is. It's not supposed to be like this. Do we or do we not believe in justice and equal treatment in this country? Do we not have democratic ideals? That was not a democratic way of dealing with me. We are either a place where people are not equal or we are equal. If we're equal, we need to be treated equally. Anyway.
Could you explain the overall how like the American acceptance of protests has like declined? Like when we look at like a protest like what you did on the Saturday of ACL, this is like baby steps compared to what happened in the 1960s and before that.
Absolutely.
And considering the fact that America was like it was founded on democratic ideals of expressing your thoughts, opinions, and taking action towards that, I feel just like being in this day and age that
Americans look at protests like these as a major inconvenience and just something
well, I'll tell you what,
yeah.
we stopped, there was an active crackdown on civil disobedience and protesting and standing up to the state in this country in the late 60s and early 70s. Y'all know about the murders of MLK, Malcolm X, Black Panthers, COINTELPRO. Go look these up. It became very clear that the FBI and those in power, the FBI was just a sort of policing arm, right? And those in power were just not going to stand for it anymore. It was a correction, and it worked. And so to get back into this is it's gonna take effort. Most of y'all think this is scary and weird and shit, like, whoa, what the hell? It's not. Yeah, I say it's bending the law towards justice. This, which is exactly what the 60s was about. Those who were fighting against slavery did the same kind of shit. They broke the law. Breaking the law sometimes is a good thing. You find me the way, email me, I'll do it. I can't think of it.
So I would just like to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing and for talking about all this.
Thank you.
And I don't really have many questions. I'm kind of just here to watch, but I just had to say something because I think that this is so important, and I think that this kind of protesting needs to be happening on a daily basis with everyone, even just if it's talking. But the kind of things that you're doing here, it should be normalized. I've been protesting since I was 3 years old. My mom brought me along. It's a normal thing, and it shouldn't be something we fear.
Yeah. I want to tell you all something. That morning, Saturday morning, we found this out around like 11 or 10 p.m. Friday night. We found out that an impromptu group that's national, Ultraviolet, had that night decided they were going to set up a chapter in Austin, and they showed up impromptu. You know how many people organized that? Are you ready? One fucking person. One. And then before she knew it, because this is how we're connected these days, she had a whole group of people and us joining her. And then it became two different actions that tailgated each other. We tailgated them. And then they joined us. And the leaders of that group were also part of this action. One of them was sitting there, the other one was in charge of chanting. She couldn't get arrested. It's like that. It's just not hard. You just put your mind to it, and it's done. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
I don't know if this is necessarily a question or if it's just me venting out frustration. I'll try to word this where it makes sense, but I just don't understand our response to this like misogynistic, sexist culture is to gear it towards women as to we need to know when to not accept drinks, or we need to know how to dress appropriately so we're not asking for it, or it's like looked down to have a dinner with like a male like higher up because it means that we're asking for it or we want to get something by using our bodies. And it just doesn't make sense to where when we try to address like a solution for this problem, it's the women who have to adjust their attitudes so we can, it's maintaining this horrible culture almost.
Yeah, that's a really good point you're making. I am very risk averse when it comes to sexual encounters, extremely risk averse. This does not mean that I do not hold men accountable when they step out. I can be risk averse, but they need to behave. Why can't we do both? In fact, why don't we move towards a culture where I don't have to be afraid? I don't have to be afraid that if I go to a bar, I don't do this anymore, but when I was young, I go to a bar with a friend who has to watch my drink. What the fuck? Like, yeah, I take all sorts of precautions, but why do I have to do that? This is supposed to be, like, what kind of jungle do we live in? Really? This is not normal, is the point. We think predatory behavior by men is the norm. This is not supposed to be the norm. It is the norm, unfortunately, but it's not supposed to be. We are either the country, the people we say we are, or we're just playing this game where we pretend.
So are there not good guys anymore?
Absolutely there are good guys.
There's a whole lot more good guys than bad guys. And when you keep saying predatory men, it hurts me. It hurts me.
I have 2 boys, madam. I have 2 boys. Yes. I have 2 boys. I have a husband. But if I just let them be steeped in this culture, I don't know what's going to happen to them. I don't know what they're going to do to their girlfriends. I don't know what they're going to do to their wives.
I'm sure you will. And each of us will do the same. We have more good guys in here than bad guys.
I don't think any of us understand your argument, though. We understand that there are good men. Do you agree that they exist in the world, though? So what action should we're talking about the action that we should take towards that. Define law, though. Define it.
You're not supposed to cut off a street. You're not supposed to do that. Blocking the public roadway is against the law. So what I'm saying is we're rising to the occasion to break the law, to cut off the roadway because of predatory men. But if we have more men who are really good guys.
How do we get that in this culture, exactly? How do we get that in this culture? Have you turned on your TV and looked at the ads? The only reason why I am valuable at some extreme level in this country, I'm a middle-aged woman now, but back when I was all plump and whatever, the reason why possibly the top reason I was of value was because of the plumpness. I don't think of men that way. We shouldn't think of each other that way. This is norm to you. What I'm saying is that's the problem. When I walk into that guy's office and he gives me a job for that reason, it crushes me. I wanted to be a physicist. No, that's horrible. Yeah, that is what he never laid a hand on me, ma'am. He never laid a hand on me, but he killed something in me. And it wasn't just him. Another professor told me, he invited me into his office. This was week 2. This is the first year that I'm a physics student. Invites me into his office week 2 and says, you want to go out on a date with me? Why are you even in physics? I can go on and on. This is not the extreme necessarily. It's this very insidious culture that I'm talking about that manifests itself in many ways, where I am second, where some guy can tell me who I am, what my value is. All right, I don't have much more time, y'all. Maybe one more question? You know why? I got to go phone bank for Beto. Wait.
I just had one more
Oh.
question. Right here,
Oh,
right in
yes,
front of me.
yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's actually not much of a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much, and I'm just, after the discussion today, pretty boggled, honestly, just because I don't understand how some people can look at the inconvenience of this and not the bigger picture and what the meaning was behind it. And I, especially just in today's culture, maybe it's because I'm a college student and I'm a young female, and I've been exposed to stuff like this, but I just really don't understand how people can turn a blind eye to it and sweep it under the rug and pretend that it's not happening. And even
It's hard to see system. It's very hard to see
it really
system.
bothers me that there can be women who come out with their stories and are just swept under the rug because there were a few women who lied, but there's so many more men who are doing these things every day, and y'all had more of a repercussion than they do.
And an inordinate amount of women that don't lie.
And people who can't come out because they're scared of their repercussions when it's just ridiculous. I just wanted to say thank you, and I really appreciate everything.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. I appreciate it. Thank you.